Fred P Radio, this is Chiara Nicoletti from the 43rd Torino Film Festival. I'm glad to be with Izabel Pakzad, director of Find Your Friends, screening here at the competition. So Izabel, first of all, like a curiosity, I was thinking about the fact that I never asked you, like we saw each other, we talked, but I never asked you about the title, Find Your Friends. So
Yes.
why that title? And what does it say about your film?
Yeah, I think it's quite literally find your friends, but I think there's a metaphor in there too, because these women, they are friends, right? But their friendships are very complicated and messy, and I think that they sometimes don't know how to see each other and hear each other. And in a way, it's a metaphor for that, you know, how we want to be heard and seen, and these women want to be heard and seen by each other, but they can't always do that for each other. So I think it's about finding that, and maybe not always finding it, but that's really where the title, I think, comes from.
The film, the film, as you said, was inspired by true events that happened to you, but was triggered, let's say, by true events. But why you've been working on this film for a long time now? I remember you talking about that.
Yeah.
But I never asked you, why did you want to tell this story?
Yeah.
Why was it so important for you that you carried along so many years?
I think, you know, I love genre movies, but the one thing I don't like is this final girl trope that these movies fall into, that the girl who is innocent and sweet and fits into this pretty little box gets to survive in the end. And in this film, you know, these women are, like I said, vulgar, they talk about sex, they have, you know, sometimes they're really bold and outspoken, and those are, I think, traits that are rarely given to young female characters in films without them being punished for it. And I think for me, it was sort of reinventing the final girl. You know, these women can be all of those things, but then they get to take their power back in this kind of fucked up, twisted way, and they get to celebrate that. So I think it's just, you know, for me, I wanted to see women being represented in a different way, the good, bad, and the ugly. You know what I mean? Not just in one way, because I do feel like in genre films, it's, for me at least, it's very similar.
Was this film also for you the chance to go back to the time in your life and, let's say, process it a little bit, I don't know, think about it, reflecting on it,
Yes.
how you were and what you become?
100%. Like I was telling you this earlier, but like, you know, I told you I went to like a crazy American party school. Like that was like part of the culture, was like drinking, and that was part of how we socialized and how we interacted with each other and how we were accepted. So I think in making this film, that's also part of me processing that, you know, like watching these girls go on this journey and sort of being lost and being in a moment in life where it's like they've just graduated college, but they're still kind of stuck in their college ways and they don't quite know how to like come out on the other end. And I think there was a moment where I felt that, you know what I mean? Because you get used to building these patterns and, like I said, these like weird rituals around partying and drinking. And then you enter the real world and you're like, oh, I don't have to act this way. Like this is, you know, I'm not in my college bubble anymore. And I'm sure a lot of people don't have that experience in college, but specific to my experience, this movie was in a way like making it made me realize, oh my God, I see myself so differently now in that part of my life, you know, and it's therapeutic and it's kind of nice in a way.
You were talking about, you know, our friendship and this girl's friendship that and I was thinking, without spoiling too much, but the film also talk about trauma through the character Amber.
Yeah.
But I felt that it was talking also about the difficulties we have also with friends to talk about trauma.
Yes.
Because you feel that she would like to say it, but she doesn't say it. So it was sort of a universal thing for me that shows you that it's not that simple.
Yes.
Even with friends, so.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it sometimes, that's sort of what I was talking about earlier too with like Midsommar, you know, like in that character too, like feeling like you're not being heard or seen, and it's like really hard to open up in those environments. And sometimes that happens even with the people you're closest to. You know, it's hard to talk about the truth or talk about, you know, something that's really vulnerable to the people you're closest to. So I think that was also part of, you know, why I wanted to tell this story. You know what I mean? Like Amber, you know, she could, I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, but, you know, she could hypothetically talk about what she's going through, right? But it's hard for her to do that. And especially with this environment, I think it makes it so much harder to be vulnerable, which is a lot of, you know, what we were talking about earlier with this kind of college experience makes it very difficult for people to talk about hard things, you know.
Grazie.
Grazie.
Isabel. And I would like to thank Izabel Pakzad, the director of Find Your Friends, screening at the 43rd Torino Film Festival. And this is Chiara Nicoletti for Fred, the Festival Insider.